Jai Hind everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel which is Explore Yourselves, Banking and General Knowledge etc. From Mailroom to Corner Office, A Banker's Journey by Dr. R. Srinivasan. Cover page of the book. Today, that is 10th June 2025, I am sharing episode 8. These are the YouTube links. Personal life. As I have said earlier, I was employed with National Bank of India Limited, 3 North Beach Road, Madras 1. In those days, the 6-digit PIN number that is now used to identify areas of the city had not come into force. The name of the city changed from Madras to Chennai in 1996 and the PIN number is 600,001. North Beach Road is now known as First Line Beach and has subsequently been changed to Rajaji Salai. The area used to be called Georgetown. We lived in Coral Merchant Street at number 105. The street got its name as it used to be home to many merchants who traded in coral in the past. In those days, the city used to have a fair amount of Telugu speaking population. The state of Andhra Pradesh was not yet established. Many Andhras lived around the place where we were based. Private cars were few and far between. Taxis were also not common. The only mode of transport used to be either electric tram or bus. Some private buses used to operate on specified routes. As the trams and buses used to run along big roads, the only alternate mode of transport was manually pulled rickshaws, physically drawn by men. It was a peculiar vehicle, with the passenger sitting on a higher pedestal and the rickshawala pulling it along. Many of them were poor, and the fare they got for carrying one or at times two passengers in one rickshaw used to be very small change. For instance, a distance of nearly 2 miles commanded only 4 annas, a quarter of a rupee. The distance between my house and the office was almost 2 miles. It took M.G. Ramchandran, a popular film actor who became the chief minister of the state, to abolish the system of manual rickshaws. Many years later, it is still in vogue in Kolkata. 11 years went past quickly. I had worked in National Bank of India Limited from March 1, 1949 to June 10, 1960. During this period, I had changed from the position of a night clerk to that of working in the export section of the bank. They called it the Outward Bills Department. This department had two wings, one dealing with exports denominated in rupees and the other in foreign currencies. Mainly the foreign currencies in which bills were drawn in those days used to be in pounds, sterling and US dollar. For some time, I was in the foreign currency section and subsequently transferred to the rupee section. I became the head of the rupee section in due course. The nature of work was such that it did not involve too much intelligence, but it was certainly hard work and required thorough follow-up and due diligence. During this period, between 1944 and 1958, we had to change our residence. First from 105 Coral Merchant Street, GT Madras to 94 Coral Merchant Street and then to 138 on the same street. If 105 was in the middle of the street, 94 was to the north and 138 to the south. These changes were necessitated due to the passing away of the owner of 105 and the two sons wanted to divide their shares of assets left behind by their mother. Number 3094 was a house with many tenants and as a result the environment of the house was not comfortable, pleasing, friendly or congenial for healthy living. Due to the unhygienic conditions prevalent there, we were keen to vacate the place. In those days, I used to work as a voluntary social worker with an organization called Guild of Service. I was introduced to this outfit by one of my senior colleagues at the National Bank of India. His name was Mr. Avala Jairam Sanathan. He was also an active member of the St. John's Ambulance Brigade. Occasionally, he used to come to the office in his ambulance brigade uniform, which made him look very majestic and respectable. It made me feel happy about him and I wanted to be near to him. In the Guild of Service, my nature of work was to visit hospitals. I had chosen to visit the Madras Ophthalmic Hospital in Egmore, Madras, on Sundays from about 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and the Government General Hospital opposite to the Madras Central Station on Saturdays from about 2:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mainly, we used to distribute a lot of stationery and correspondence such as postcards, postal covers, and inland letters, and some white papers. Every patient, especially in the general wards, was visited. We made inquiries about their background, the treatment they were getting at the hospital, and whether they were looked after by the hospital staff or not. Many of these patients had no close relative who came to see them, and naturally our visits were a great solace to them. Their relatives lived far away from the hospital, and the only way to communicate with them was through letters. Those who could afford to buy the stationery from us did so, and we were giving them for free to those who could not pay. More than this, some of the patients who were illiterate needed help in writing letters, and when a reply came, they requested us to read it out to them. This was the service we rendered as volunteers. This type of work was more in demand in the ophthalmic hospital because many patients had their eyes covered by bandages. The volume of work was much more there than in the general hospital. Peculiar cases used to be encountered. Once I had a patient who was craving to eat a masala dosa. I had to go out of the hospital and procure his object of desire from a nearby hotel, of course at my cost. Sometimes we develop some sort of familiarity with patients who stayed for a long time. On a Saturday, during the time I was living at 94 Coral Merchant Street, I visited General Hospital. As volunteers, we had the privileges of visiting patients even in the isolation wards. I had gone into one such and was talking to a patient who was struck down with typhoid. In the course of the conversation, he felt so emotional that he got out of his bed and tightly embraced me and started crying profusely. He said that no one cared for him and I was something like a god sent to help him. It took a lot of effort and the intervention of the hospital staff to extricate myself from his embrace. Generally, when we returned home, we removed our clothes, took a shower, and only then attended to other work. But on that fateful Saturday, by the time I returned home, I was infected with typhoid and got very high fever. I had to lie down straight away. The fever continued for 45 days. The bank had a doctor on its panel, and members of the staff could go to him for treatment, and the bank paid the doctor's fees and the cost of medicine. The doctor attached to the bank was Dr. U. Srinivasa Rao, who belonged to a famous family of doctors and practiced at the Thambu Street, a road parallel to the road where I lived and was on the way to the office. However, I could not go to him because I was bedridden. The bank used to send the doctor to the residence of staff members only when they suspected that someone was feigning illness. I had plucked up courage and asked the bank to send the doctor to my house and explained that I was physically unable to go to him. The doctor was kind enough to visit me several times during the period of my illness. I am mentioning this incident because in the history of the bank, this was perhaps the only time when a petty member of the staff could ask the British management to send the doctor to his house. Around this time, my father had a transfer in his posting. He was transferred to a place called Thiruvallur, about 25 miles from Madras. It was not possible to commute the distance every day. He therefore went to Thiruvallur and stayed alone and visited us frequently or during long weekends. After about a year and a half, he got transferred back to Madras. Thanks to my in-laws, we decided to shift our residence, and that is how we moved out to 138 Coral Merchant Street. During the 11 years I was with the National Bank of India, it had undergone some name changes. Lloyds Bank and Grindlays Bank were also operating in the country during those years, and all these three banks were merged and came to be known as National Overseas and Grindlays Bank Limited. Later, it shortened its name to National and Grindlays Bank Limited. Subsequently, it became Grindlays Bank Limited and later simply Grindlays PLC. When this bank was taken over by the Australia and New Zealand Bank, it came to be known as Grindlays ANZ. Very recently, it was taken over by the Standard Bank. The Standard Bank also has its share of mergers and acquisitions. There was also a bank called Chartered Bank of India, Australia, and China, and it was also represented in India. They shortened their name to Chartered Bank. I'm not able to remember the years in which these changes took place. Later, Chartered Bank was also taken over by the Standard Bank of South Africa, who themselves shortened their name to Standard Bank. When Standard Bank took over the branches of Chartered Bank, they came to be known as Standard Chartered Bank. At one stage, even after the branches of Grindlays were taken over by the Standard Bank, due to the delay in completing the formalities, branches of Grindlays continued to work independently for some time. Later, all of them were merged and now known as Standard Chartered Bank. It is one of the strongest foreign banks in India with a large network of branches. There were some instances that I can recollect while I was in this bank. One was the very first time the employees went on strike. There was a period when the workers of the banking industry got under a single banner of a trade union. The All India Bank Employees Association, AIBEA, was the apex organization that affiliated all the unions of all the banks. This was the trade union wing of the Communist Party of India, CPI. Com H.L. Parwana and Com Prabhatkar were the pillars of the AIBEA. They built it into a militant organization and a powerful one. At a minute's notice, they can bring the working of banks to a standstill. That was the extent of their power and popularity. I became a member of this union and belonged to the local body called the Madras State Bank Employees Federation. I was an ordinary member and knew nothing about the trade union movement or their activities. All that I knew was to follow the leader blindly. Those were the formative years of the trade union movement in India's banking industry. Unions had no big financial backing. They did not even have a decent office or furniture. In fact, they hardly had any office equipment. Thanks to my having good handwriting, I was chosen by the leaders to write the union circular on guest Nestor stencils, which got duplicated on a Roneo duplicating machine and sent to various units of the Federation. I held the leaders in great esteem, especially when it was a privilege to come into their close proximity. Leaders like Prabhatkar and H.L. Parwana were legends in their lifetime, and a person of my position hardly found any opportunity to come anywhere near them. It is certainly a rare thing that at a much later stage in life, these very leaders or their successors were forced to by circumstances to deal with me to bargain for the welfare of their members. Whenever it happened, I never forgot they were once my leaders, and I showed them all the respect they deserved and commanded in equal measure. In fact, this connection helped me to handle very difficult situations very comfortably and with the full cooperation of the leaders. But more on this at the right time later. I refer to the first ever strike in the British Bank. I was one of the volunteers who stood at the gate to ensure that no employees sneaked into the office when others were abstaining from work. One day, the British manager of the bank came to the gate and spotted me. He came straight over and asked me to specifically come in and work. That was more a ruse to say that he wanted me specifically for a job, and if I refused to go in and work, he could terminate my services for insubordination. I did not know why I refused to obey the orders, but I did not go in. Maybe I did not understand the implication at that time. I also did not know why I didn't lose my job. Another major incident that I remember was one when a well known exporter and a valued client of the National Bank of India had asked for a certain certificate and that he wanted it urgently. It would have taken some time to arrange for that to happen as it related to previous years. However, I was able to do this work to his satisfaction fairly quickly and he came to the bank to thank me. The general practice of the bank in those days was that customers had to seek permission before coming into the premises, but had to stay on the other side of the counter. This gentleman was waiting and requested me to come out and meet him in the banking hall. I met him and he said that he was very happy that I helped him. As a token of his appreciation, he offered me three crisp 100 rupee notes. That was the first time in my life that I saw 300 rupees notes at one time, but I politely declined the gift. I told him that if he felt that I helped him to his satisfaction, he should go and speak to my manager about my health and not to offer any gratification. I do not know if he did that. While in the National Bank of India Limited, I was tempted by the lucrative offer of one increment in the basic salary. If I passed the first part of the CAIIB examination conducted by the Indian Institute of Bankers, and two more increments for passing the second part of the same examination. With my great academic achievements thus far, about which I have written earlier, I did not realize how easy or difficult the exam used to be. But the lure of the increments made me join the institute and apply for the exams. The office of the institute and the library attached to it used to be located in the premises of State Bank of India, formerly known as Imperial Bank of India. Part 1 used to have 5 subjects and the second part had 6. The institute was always considerate to people like me for whom passing exam is not only a tough proposition but also a nightmare too. They had decided that one could pass the parts in more than one attempt and need not take the exam in the subjects where one had already passed. I did not know the truth, but it used to be talked among intellectuals of my caliber that the system of evaluating the answer papers was also a well kept secret. No student can ask for his answer papers to be returned to him to see where he had failed. After all the answer papers were received back at the institute after evaluation by the examiners and they were bundled up and sent to the godown. A peon in the institute was given two rubber stamps. One said passed and the other said failed. The pass stamp used green ink and the failed in was red. The peon had the discretion to use the stamps as he liked. The result sheet used to give the name of the subject and at the end of the right side the passed or failed stamp was affixed and sent to the candidate. I have known cases where candidates who did not appear for an exam still passed in that subject and failed in another where he had already passed in his earlier attempt. Some of the readers here may like to comment on this in the light of their own experiences of those days. In my case, attempting to pass the exam was an annual affair. I remember appearing at least 3 years for the first part and nothing less for the second. It was a coincidence that in commercial geography I failed in my second attempt too. I would like to recall how far-sighted my boss was to have told me that at the timing of my sitting the exam in geography, I got the globe, meaning a big zero. Stranger still was a mystery that in my third attempt I got a distinction in the same subject. Maybe because I had written to the institute to say that they seemed to have erred in failing me twice previously. The peon must have been told to choose the other rubber stamp when I appeared for the third time. The chapter of personal life will continue. Thank you very much for your patience.